Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take really complex, dense academic stuff and basically turn it into a clear roadmap for you, the learner. Today, we're diving into a truly foundational area, child and adolescent psychiatry. We're synthesizing a massive chapter from the well-known Kaplan and Sadock's 11th edition. And I mean, this chapter's huge, covers, the whole developmental journey, brain science, Freud, diagnostic criteria, even social media's impact. Our goal here is simple. Boil all that down to the essentials so you get a really solid handle in the field fast.
Yeah, and it's striking how fast things are moving. The chapter points out three big recent advances. First, there's just this explosion of evidence-based knowledge, actual data on what works. Second, huge leaps in genetics. And third, something really practical, telehealth. Since 2020, it's really changed the game for access to care.
Oh, absolutely. That telehealth point is so important. It's not just, a pandemic thing. It genuinely helps break down those geographic barriers, reaching kids who might not have gotten help otherwise.
Right, it connects the science, the psychological understanding, and how we actually deliver care. That's the modern reality.
Okay, so let's dig in. Maybe start with what treatments we know are effective, and then connect that back to the developing brain itself. So when we talk about successful treatments, the big studies are pretty convincing. The source material really highlights combination treatment, specifically, that's pairing medication with cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. It shows strong results for kids and teens dealing with anxiety disorders, OCD, and also major depressive disorder.
And what's really interesting is the timing. The research indicates that kids who show a really strong positive response, like significant improvement in the first 3 months, they're much more likely to keep those gains long-term.
So that early progress is key.
It really underscores why closely monitoring progress early on is just, well, non-negotiable in child psychiatry. You need to know quickly if the plan is working.
Okay, let's shift to the hardware, right? The brain. We know it grows incredibly fast early on, hitting about 95% of adult size by age 5. But development doesn't just stop there.
Not at all. Two huge processes continue well into adulthood: synaptic pruning and myelination.
Right, pruning sounds like cleaning up.
Exactly. It's the use it or lose it principle.
Mm.
The brain gets rid of connections that aren't being used much, making the whole system more efficient.
And myelination, that's the insulation part.
Precisely. It's the fatty coating wrapping around nerve pathways. Think of it like insulating electrical wires. It dramatically speeds up the signals. These two things together massively shape social decision-making, behavior regulation, everything.
And here's something I found surprising from the neuroimaging data in the chapter. The timing for gray matter development isn't the same for boys and girls.
That's right. The peak volume and then the normal decline after puberty. It happens about a year earlier in boys, on average.
Wow, okay. So that's important context when thinking about when certain conditions might emerge.
Definitely. Which brings us neatly to diagnosis. The standard is the DSM-5-TR. It defines a psychiatric disorder as basically a clinically significant problem in thinking, managing emotions, or behavior.
But if the brain is constantly changing through pruning and myelination, doesn't that make putting things into neat diagnostic boxes kind of difficult?
It does. That's a major limitation of the categorical approach. You either meet the criteria or you don't. The reality is often much messier.
So why stick with it then, if it has these issues?
Well, the main reason is that it gives everyone, clinicians, researchers, a common language. But yeah, the challenges are real. Kids often have comorbidity.
Meaning more than one disorder at the same time.
Exactly. And also heterogeneity. That means two kids can have the same diagnosis, say ADHD, but present with very different symptoms. So treatment has to be individualized.
Okay, so the DSM-5-TR tried to address some of this, right? With some big changes.
Yes, two major modifications were kept. First, autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. This now groups together 5 older diagnoses, like Asperger's. The core features now are challenges in social communication and interaction, and restricted repetitive patterns of interests or behaviors. Both have to be present.
And the second big one?
Disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, DMDD. This was added to specifically identify kids with really persistent irritability and frequent severe temper outbursts. It helps distinguish them from, say, kids with bipolar disorder.
Got it. Okay, let's zoom out a bit. How do we even think about development itself? What's the main framework?
The dominant idea is the transactional model. It's really powerful.
Transactional. How does that work?
It basically says development isn't just genes or environment. It's a constant back and forth. Your genetics give you a certain potential, maybe a vulnerability or resilience.
Okay, like a starting point.
Right. But then your environment, family, school, experiences constantly interacts with that potential, shaping how things unfold. for better or worse.
Mm,
It's a continuous transaction over time.
that makes sense. It also sounds like it makes pinpointing the exact start of a disorder really complicated.
Absolutely. Which is where something like the two-hit model comes in. It's a theory trying to explain why some disorders don't show up until later.
Two hits. So, like, one vulnerability isn't enough.
Kind of. The idea is
Hmm.
you have a primary genetic vulnerability, that's the first hit. But it might stay dormant until a second hit, often an environmental trigger, sets it off.
Ah, okay. Can you give an example?
A classic one is bipolar disorder. The rates really jump up during adolescence. The theory suggests puberty itself, the hormonal shifts, the stress might act as that second hit for someone already genetically vulnerable.
Interesting. Let's go back to the brain's flexibility for a sec. The chapter talks about plasticity.
Yeah, brain plasticity is incredible. It's the brain's ability to reorganize for one part to compensate for another if needed.
Like how?
The source gives a great example. In people born deaf, the part of the brain that normally processes sound, the auditory cortex, doesn't just sit idle. It can actually get recruited to help process visual information or touch sensations. The brain adapts to the input it gets.
Wow. That adaptability is amazing. We also see clear developmental steps in things like language, right?
Definitely. It follows a pretty predictable path. You get cooing around 3-4 months, then meaningful single words, usually by 12 months.
By age 3.
By 36 months, a typical 3-year-old speech should be about 75% understandable to someone who doesn't know them well.
And this whole language thing sparked a big debate, didn't it? Chomsky versus Skinner.
The classic nature versus nurture debate in language. Chomsky argued for an innate, universal grammar hardwired in us. Skinner emphasized learning through imitation and reinforcement from the environment.
And the current thinking.
It's more nuanced now. Most agree it's likely a combination of both innate abilities and environmental learning.
Okay, and knowing these language milestones is actually really useful clinically.
Hugely useful. Think about that scenario the chapter mentions. A 2-year-old having severe tantrums.
Yeah.
If you find out he only uses maybe 20 words and can't string 2 words together, which is delayed for his age, a smart clinician might think, okay, maybe these tantrums aren't just bad behavior.
Right. Maybe it's because he literally can't express his frustration or needs with words.
Exactly. The tantrums become his primary way of communicating. It reframes the whole problem.
Okay, shifting gears again. Cognitive development. We have to talk about Piaget.
Can't talk child development without Piaget.
Mm.
His stages are built around 2 core ideas: assimilation and accommodation.
Explain those again. Sure.
Assimilation is when you take new information and just fit it into an existing idea you have. Like a toddler sees a zebra for the first time and calls it a horsey because it fits their existing horse category.
Okay. And accommodation.
Accommodation is when the new information doesn't fit. So you have to change your existing idea or create a new one. Seeing the zebra and learning it's different, creating a new zebra category that's accommodation. It's how we learn and adapt our thinking.
Got it. And its first stage is sensoromotor. Birth to 2.
Yes, and the huge milestone there is developing object permanence, usually around 9 months.
Mm.
It's the understanding that something still exists even when you can't see it. Peekaboo stops being magic.
Huh. Right. Then comes the preoperational stage, ages 2 to 7. What's the key feature there?
The defining characteristic is egocentrism. And it doesn't mean selfish, exactly. It means the child literally cannot understand something from another person's perspective. They assume everyone sees and knows what they do.
And that has real clinical weight, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That egocentrism makes young children really vulnerable to blaming themselves when bad things happen, like parents divorcing or someone dying. Their default thought is often, this must be my fault.
Wow. So clinicians need to actively address that self-blame.
Definitely. It's a crucial part of helping kids process trauma.
Okay. We also need to touch on Freud's psychosexual stages.
Right, Freud. His idea was about psychic energy focusing on different body parts and getting stuck or fixated if there was conflict.
Pretty much. He outlined stages, and unresolved issues in a stage could lead to lasting personality traits.
Like the oral stage, birth to 1.
Focused on feeding, suckling. Freud theorized that conflict here, maybe inconsistent feeding, could lead to an oral fixation later, things like smoking, overeating, or maybe being overly dependent or needy.
Okay, and then the anal stage, 1 to 3 years old, the terrible 2s.
Yes, centered around toilet training and the struggle for control and autonomy. If that goes poorly, Freud suggested it could lead to what he called the anal compulsive personality.
Which is like,
Think overly orderly, stingy, stubborn. Someone really preoccupied with control. It's a framework for understanding how early struggles around autonomy can shape later behavior.
This idea of early relationships and control leads right into attachment theory, doesn't it? Perfectly. Attachment is that deep, lasting emotional bond, usually with a primary caregiver. Key figures here are John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth.
Ainsworth did the famous strange situation experiment.
That's the one. She observed how toddlers reacted to separations and reunions with their caregiver. From that, she described different attachment styles.
There was securely attached?
Right. Kids who feel safe exploring, but seek comfort when distressed. Then avoidant, they seem indifferent to the caregiver. And ambivalent or resistant. They're clingy, but also might resist comfort.
And there was a fourth category.
Yes, disorganized, disoriented. These kids showed confusing, contradictory behaviors. And importantly, the chapter notes this style is often linked to experiences of maltreatment. That early attachment quality really sets the stage for future relationships.
Which brings us to adolescence. According to Eric Erikson, what's the main job here?
Erickson's big task for adolescents is resolving the crisis of identity versus role confusion, figuring out, who am I?
And if you navigate that successfully,
The outcome is fidelity. The ability to be true to yourself and consequently to form real, committed relationships with others.
but finding that identity is happening at a time when the adolescent brain is kind of, well, paradoxical, right?
Very much so. This is the dual system model. On one hand, teens are getting much better at empathy, understanding others' perspectives, mentalizing.
But on the other hand,
They can be incredibly prone to reckless risk-taking. It seems contradictory.
so what explains that mismatch?
It's thought to be about different brain systems maturing at different speeds. Think of it like having a really powerful accelerator, the social and emotional system, driven by reward centers like the ventral striatum that develops relatively early.
Way, gas pedals down.
Right. But the brakes, the cognitive control system, mainly in the prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and impulse control, are still under construction. They mature later, so you have high sensitivity to rewards and peer influence without fully developed brakes.
That makes a lot of sense. Physically, of course, this is also when puberty hits. The chapter mentions Tanner stages.
Yep, sexual maturity ratings, or SMR. It's a standardized way to track the physical changes of puberty, rated from stage 1, prepubertal, to stage 5, adult. It happens sequentially, usually starting around age 10 for girls, 13 for boys, but there's variation.
And cognitively, there's a big leap, too.
Huge leap. They move from concrete operational thinking, focusing on the here and now, tangible things, to formal operational thinking.
Which means they can think abstractly.
Yes, hypothetically, consider possibilities, reason about abstract concepts like justice or morality.
But even though they can understand risks abstractly,
Right, they often still operate with a sense of omnipotence or personal fable. They might know drug driving is dangerous in general, but still feel like it won't happen to me. That abstract understanding doesn't always translate to behavior.
identity formation also involves figuring out racial and ethnic identity, which the chapter discusses.
Yes, and it starts incredibly early. The brain apparently begins sorting faces into perceived groups within the first year of life.
And disturbingly, the source mentions toddlers in the U.S. might already show a pro-white bias.
Unfortunately, yes. It seems to reflect internalizing the biases present in the wider society. This makes navigating racial identity development particularly complex for youth of color. Models like William Cross's are helpful here.
Tell us about Cross's model.
It describes stages. Pre-encounter, where race isn't very salient. Then an encounter, often in a negative experience like racism, makes race highly relevant, followed by immersions, actively exploring one's own culture, sometimes rejecting the dominant culture, and finally, internalization, achieving a secure, positive sense of one's racial identity.
And Gene Finney has a similar model.
Yes, the 3 stages. Unexamined identity, then a period of search moratorium where they explore, and finally an achieved identity. The crucial point is that racism and discrimination act as major stressors that complicate this whole process.
So you've got these internal identity struggles, the brain's reward system is dialed up, cognitive control isn't fully there, plus peer pressure. It's a recipe for risk-taking.
It is, and then you throw in the modern digital world.
Right. The chapter notes the sheer speed of tech adoption is unlike anything before. Google plus hitting 50 million users in 88 days. That's fast.
Incredibly fast. And that instant gratification potential meets that immature, highly reactive adolescent reward system. Not always a great mix.
The substance use data reflects that vulnerability, doesn't it?
It does. The source cites the 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Survey data showing a massive jump, 78% in high schoolers, using electronic vapor products like e-cigarettes just between 2017 and 2018. That's a huge increase.
And what about the whole multitasking thing? Kids scrolling social media while doing homework?
Yeah, they might feel like they're multitasking effectively, but the research suggests otherwise. Brain imaging studies, even ones simulating driving while distracted, show the brain isn't truly doing multiple things at once.
It's just switching back and forth really fast.
Exactly. Rapid task switching, which constantly interrupts attention and makes focused thinking much harder.
And the online world itself brings new risks. Cyberbullying is a big one.
A huge one. The stats mentioned are concerning. 54% of teens had witnessed it. 24% said they'd been cyberbullied. Plus, there are widespread worries about fake information being posted or receiving unwanted contact online. It adds another layer of social stress.
Wow. Okay, that was quite a journey through this chapter. We went from treatment data and brain development through Piaget, Freud, attachment,
Hmm.
all the way to identity, risk-taking, and the digital age in adolescence.
It really covers the spectrum. I think the main takeaway from the chapter is that development is lifelong, yes, but childhood and adolescence are uniquely intense periods. It's where that dynamic dance between our genetic blueprint and our environmental experiences really shapes who we become capable of complex thought, deep relationships, and hopefully a solid sense of self.
So, a final thought for you, our listener. Remember that key brain area, the prefrontal cortex, the part handling judgment, impulse control, planning ahead. The source material makes it clear that it's still actively developing into your early 20s. So even if you're past adolescence, think about this. Your environment, your choices today are still playing a role in shaping those final foundational brain structures. As the chapter shows, the work of becoming yourself, in a way, is never really quite finished.